Hey, everybody, welcome back to the One Day at a Time Gambling Addiction Podcast. My name is Rob, and I'm your host. And today I thought I'd try something a little bit different. So, we always bring guests on for these podcasts, and I thought, why not do one solo episode every single week? So, from now on Thursdays, I'll be releasing solo episodes of my podcast here on YouTube in hopes that you'll get a better understanding of how my recovery is going from gambling addiction, and I can share my weekly reflections about what I've learned so far. Again, in hopes that it'll help you. So in today's session, I wanted to share 3 things that I've learned from recovering from a gambling addiction. And I think that these 3 things are often overlooked because when we're in the midst of our gambling addiction, we're not worried about anything at all but staying in action. It's only after we stop that we get the chance to reflect on, were the decisions that we were making the right decisions? And I can tell you with pretty much certainty that they were not. But I thought I would touch on 3 points today that I learned in reflection in hopes that you might get there a little bit sooner than I did. So the very first thing that I learned is that gambling addiction is really not about the money. So when I go on live and people ask me questions like, how much money did you lose? I always tell them that I'm not going to answer. And this is why. The amounts that you lose are relative to you, but when you're losing them, you're not even really thinking about the fact that you lost them until afterwards. When you lose a lot of money, you have to deal with the fallout and the consequences of that. But when you're in action, you have thoughts like, oh, well, I've already lost this. What's a little bit more? And you keep going and going. So it's really not about the money. It's using the money as an understanding of I'm either up or I'm down. And I have to get back to that midpoint if I'm down. And if I'm up, I got to get up higher. It's not about finite amounts. It's not about picking a certain dollar amount to hit, certain dollar amount to win back. So it's really about keeping the rush going. When you're a gambling addict, there's no win that's big enough to get you to stop. You're going to keep going and going no matter what. So you have to come to terms with the fact that all wins are going to fuel future losses. So it doesn't matter if you were really close to hitting a jackpot. It doesn't matter if you actually just hit a jackpot. If you're a gambling addict, you're not going to stop. That money's going to go right back into the machine because it's not about the money. It's about continuing to feel and continuing to do the action to stay in action. That's the reality of things for us, guys. It's not about winning and losing. It's about being involved. And I'm going to dive into that a little bit deeper throughout the rest of this episode. The second thing that I've realized is that gambling addicts can never gamble normally again. It's like this great dream that we have that, one day we can go back into a casino and not have it ruin our lives. But what are the odds of that actually happening? I'm not quite sure. And why would you want it to happen? For me, imagining going to the casino and gambling like maybe my family gambles once a year, going to the casino with a couple $100s and being happy with the results either way, that's not something that I would be happy with. I would just feel so unsatisfied, so empty. Betting the smaller stakes really wouldn't do anything for me. I know it's not about the money, as I said, but as we build up a tolerance towards the amounts that we're spending, the smaller amounts just don't register the same neurotransmitters in our brain. They don't register that dopamine and serotonin that gets us excited about gambling because we're so used to gambling higher amounts. So once again, it's not the money that matters, but as you stack up time in gambling, you have to bet more and more to feel that same feeling, and that's what matters. I don't think that we can go and gamble normally like normal people because eventually we're just going to end up back in the same spot as we started. If I go in there and I try to bet small, how long am I going to be able to stick to that before I get frustrated, bored, tired of it, and want to bet higher to get that same rush? I think that if I was in a casino setting and I was betting small, it would only be a matter of time until I broke down and started betting bigger. Now, a lot of people will break in and say, you could just use bankroll management. You could use units. You could come up with some idea as to how to spend better when you're gambling. And I agree. You could use all that. But as a gambling addict, that's something I would never use because it would limit the amount of fun and pleasure that I could get from my gambling. It would limit the excitement. And when it comes to unit size and bankroll management, these are just ways of budgeting your money so that you lose more slowly over time. I just want to reiterate that. If there was a way to be profitable in the casino would ban you for doing it. So just remember that, guys. The main thing that I wanted to dive into today is the last thing that I've learned over the course of a couple months of reflecting about my gambling addiction. And what was really important about this is that it gave me the insight that, one, I'm not alone, and two, it's not a moral failing to be a gambling addict. Gambling addiction is caused by a chemical imbalance in the aforementioned neurotransmitters of dopamine and serotonin. What happens is that when you place a bet, you get this rush of excitement, this adrenaline, this endorphin rush that's released in your brain, and it gets you feeling like what I'm doing is pleasurable, it's the right thing to be doing, and I should keep doing it because your body craves those neurotransmitters to be fired off. They're validating that whatever you're doing is not only pleasurable, but very good for you, whether it be physically or mentally. And As we all come to realize, gambling is not good for you physically, nor is it mentally, and definitely not financially. When you realize that what's going on in your brain is the chemical reaction, it gives you the chance to take more of a scientific approach with things. When these chemicals fire off in your brain because of your gambling, you hit this huge rush of endorphins that's not natural to the human body. What has to happen is you have to come crashing back down, but you don't just come back down to that baseline that you were at originally. No, your brain has evolved over the course of millions of years. So, what does it do? It does the exact thing that it needs to do to maintain that baseline, and it sends you all the way back down through it so that eventually, when you find balance, it's that baseline. But as you continue to gamble, you're increasing where that baseline is over and over again. And eventually, you get to the point where you have to bet a lot of money to feel the same way that you felt in the beginning of your gambling experience. That's just a result of your tolerance increasing over time, and the way that is expressed in gambling is the dollar amounts that you're gambling or the amount of time that you're spending gambling. So either way, you're going to be losing more money much more quickly. It was nice to note this because for a while, seeing that no one else in my family and none of my friends are addicted to gambling, I thought I must be the only gambling addict in the world. And I thought there must be something wrong with me or that I'm an immoral person. But the truth is, there's nothing wrong with me. I just got myself chemically addicted to something that was not healthy for me. And I needed to reset that by staying away from it. So the good news is, guys, that your brain will naturally reset itself. Scientists estimate that this can take between 21 and 90 days, which is why groups celebrate 90 days of sobriety, because your brain is getting the chance to reset itself. Your body is resetting back to that normal baseline that you were at before you started gambling. And that is why it's so hard to stay away from it in the first 90 days. It's because you're actually experiencing symptoms of withdrawal. Whether they be physical or mental is dependent on your situation, I suppose. But your body is craving that initial feeling of gambling again. And you can't do it anymore because if you're a gambling addict, you can't gamble normally. You can't gamble like other people, nor would you ever stick to it. Why would you ever want to stick to it? It's just not something that I quite understand. So, this great obsession of wanting to be normal or wanting to go back to the way we were before, we have to get rid of that. It's not going to happen, and it's not even worth thinking about. It's not something that you're ever going to be able to do again in a healthy way or in even a safe way. So, my take here is you can learn a lot about yourself if you stop gambling as a gambling addict and pursue a better life. And as you begin to learn more about yourself, you can become a lot more confident in yourself and realize that it wasn't a moral failing. You just got yourself involved in a bad situation that you don't need to be doing anymore. You can live a happier and healthier life in recovery. That's why I do what I do here, guys. I want to make content to help people find pathways to recovery and, live a better life without gambling involved. And, it's harder than just stopping because, we are chemically addicted to gambling. But give yourself that time away from gambling, your brain will reset itself. It's a marvel of human nature that it's able to do so, but you don't even need medication for that to happen. You just need time away from the bet. So, what I want to tell you is to keep believing in yourself, keep believing in your recovery. You don't have to gamble to feel happiness anymore. You can allow your brain to fix itself. You can feel happiness in the normal things in life. It will take time. You have to be patient. But I know that with time, because I've done it myself, things get easier. After about 3 months, the urges began to fade to want to gamble. And nowadays, I barely think about it at all, besides making the content that I do. So, take me as an example, but not just me. There's thousands of other people out there who have recovered from a gambling addiction. Take it from them. Just keep putting in that time, keep stacking up those days, and of course, keep getting better together, one day at a time. Thank you, and I'll see you next week for the solo episode.